Hey, what's up, folks? This is Seraph, the philosophy guy, and today I actually thought we should talk about something called causation, because I think causation is primarily how most of us pattern-seeking mammals tend to think, and there's nothing particularly wrong about that. It's just that 90% of the time it tends to influence us or compel us to postulate answers that we can't really substantially prove, because we want everything to come from a place where it's following a pattern of cause and effect. And that's actually true, considering that we're social and intelligent. So if there is something, the only logical question that we tend to ask ourselves is, what caused that something to come into being? It's like what Thomas Aquinas struggled with, and something that made him suggest this issue of a prime mover for everything that we're seeing around us, the universe, the biodiversity. If it's there now and we're seeing it in the current sense, then there must be a time when it wasn't actually there, and then somebody made it start to be there. So in short, someone caused it to be there. And then this Thomas Aquinas called a primary mover, someone or something that moved things into being. And one way that we can define causation can be best put from the Internet Encyclopedia or IEP. And it reads, the question, what is causation, may sound like a trivia question. It is as sure as common knowledge can ever be that some things cause other things, that there are causes and they necessitate certain effects. We say that we know that what caused the president's death was an assassin's shot, but when asked why, we will most certainly reply that it is because the latter was necessary for the former, which is an answer that, upon close philosophical examination, falls short of veracity. In a less direct way, the president's grandmother's giving birth to his mother was necessary for his death too. That, however, we would not describe as this death's cause. Before we can ask what causation is, it is vital to consider whether we can come to know it at all. So this is a very nice article. You could actually look it up on the on the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Yeah, I particularly chose this topic because of the questions that people tend to ask about the universe. Like, it just doesn't sit in well for most people to feel that the universe in all its grandeur and all its magnitude just happened to be, came about by sheer chance. They feel because of its intricacy and complexity, it must have been caused by somebody. And remember, back in the days, we felt the same way about the biodiversity that we see around. Not until Charles Darwin came in the picture and showed us, look, there is actually more to the to the question than you realize. And there's actually a better alternative to explain the biodiversity, which is natural selection. But we haven't had, like Richard Dawkins likes to say, we haven't had a Charles Darwin for the universe. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're yet to have one, but currently as it stands, we don't have. So the side effect, or the thing or one aspect that I feel makes this causation thought pattern hit the wall is it builds a trail of causes that cannot be substantially argued for, because if you postulate that there's a cause for something that we're currently seeing, say for example, if you postulate that there was a cause or a conscious mind behind the universe, then you have to then explain why that conscious mind came about, like who caused that conscious mind to come into being. Thomas Aquinas actually thought just by saying uncaused causa he solved the question. No, he didn't. He didn't even begin to answer the question. So the issue of causation actually builds more problems than it solves. Or if you say it's more like trying to allow me to quote Matt Dillahunty when he said in a debate that he had with IP, I think. Yeah, he was like, postulating a primary cause or a prime mover or something like that, or something in those lines, simply goes to show that you're trying to answer a mystery with another mystery, a bigger mystery at that. And Richard Dawkins said, how is it that you're struggling to figure out the primary cause of the universe? You can't explain that. You're struggling with that. And then you take a leap, an extraordinary leap, to try to explain a conscious mind that's behind causing this whole universe. I mean, where do you even start? You know what I mean? Yeah. So most people feel it's justified to feel as though there's a cause. But then if you're going to feel like that, at least try to have an intelligent argument to bring to the table, because it's an extraordinary claim. It's really not a black and white thing. You can't just pull up antiquated quotes from a book that stood the test of time and feel like you've answered a philosophical argument, when in actuality you really haven't. So you need to understand that if you're going to follow the cause and effect argument, follow it right down to the end. And if you're going to postulate that there's a conscious cause behind our being here, then you have to also give a solid explanation for why that cause came about. So the same article that I was reading to you said this in the subheading, what is causation and why do people care? So causation is a live topic across a number of disciplines due to factors other than its philosophical interest. The second half of the 20th century saw an increase in the availability of information about the social world. The growth of statistics and the disciplines it enables, such as economics and I don't know how to read this word, and the growth of computing power. This led at first to the prospect of much improved policy and individual choice through an analysis of all this data, and especially in the early 21st century. So the advent of potentially useful artificial intelligence that might be able to achieve another step change in the same direction. But in the background of all of this lurks the scepter of causation. Using information to inform goal-directed action often seems to require more than mere extrapolation of projection. It often seems to require that we understand something of the causal nature of the situation. This has seemed painfully obvious to some, but not to others. Increasing quantities of information and abilities to process it forces us to decide whether or not causation is part of this march of progress or an obstacle on the road. So much for why people care about causation. What is this thing that we care about so much? To paraphrase the great physicist Richard Feynman, it is safe to say that nobody understands causation. But unlike quantum physics, causation is not a useful calculating device yielding astonishingly accurate predictions, and those who wish to use causal reasoning for any actual purpose do not have the luxury of following Feynman's injunction to shut up and calculate. The philosophers cannot be pushed into a room and left to debate causation. The door cannot be closed on conceptual debate. The remainder of this section offers a summary of the main elements of so that's it. Causation is also something it's a very loose term. It's not something that you can easily define, and because of that, it's a potential ground for philosophical disagreement, because it's pretty fluid as a term. You can't really put it in a box and just stamp a direct definition to its name. It's a much complicated thing, but in a basic sense, it's simply something causing another person or causing another thing to come into actuality. And it's actually even hard to explain causing. What do you mean cause? How are you defining a word while putting it in the definition? You know what I mean? So it's not pretty easy. neither is it pretty easy to make your case when you're using cause and effect as your primary argument to drive the point you're trying to arrive at. It's really difficult. It simply leaves you trapped in an infinite regress. Yeah, or turtles, or turtles down the way, or turtles going down. Yeah, in Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time from the Big Bang to Black Holes, Chapter 1 starts off with a very funny experience, and likely it was an experience that maybe Bertrand Russell had with a certain old lady who was in his lecture or something. He was telling them about the universe and all that stuff, and then the lady said, everything that you've told us is rubbish. And then he was like, why would you think that? Because and then the lady said, no, the universe is actually standing on a giant turtle. And then Bertrand Russell was like, what's the giant turtle standing on? Then the old lady was like, you're very smart, but it's turtles all the way down. Yeah, infinite regress. So if you're gonna say the turtle is like, it's just leads you into a regression that you can't really answer for. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Occam's razor. So you really can't settle so much when you're trying to follow the argument of cause and effect. If you're going to use cause and effect, be cautious about how you use it, and be in a position where you have the intellectual muscle to make your case for it.